Hey, good evening, everybody. Back here on the bench. Get the camera situated here. All right, so finished up with some dinner. Got some laundry started for tomorrow, and figured we'd come back out here and see what else we can't get into. Good evening time, everybody. And for what time we've got left, again, happy Easter to everybody. All right, so revamping on the midnight special. So we've got everything already pulled out as to the prior video. We've got our new transistors already set. Same thing with our input and output transformers. Those are already preset and ready to go. We're basically down to just the last little bit of it. We still have to put our input wires for our B plus to each transformer. That still has to be installed, and we need to finish up the bias circuit for sideband use. So, like I said, right there at the end, like I said, just finishing up a few little things. I went ahead while we were off. Good evening, Bill. And snapped out the back hole just a little bit, and we put a nice heavy HACO connector in the back for our wiring that's going to be feeding this as well. So yeah, so let me grab some heavy gauge wire for our B plus here, and we'll get started on this. So I think I've already got some pre-cut pieces, but we're going to take a look here real quick. See what I've got. There we go. It depends, Bill. My schedule is, rather hectic, due to the fact that it is 12-hour days. For example, this evening, if you'd like, after we finish with this video, you're welcome to give me a call. Otherwise, as far as essentially Monday through Friday, typically the best time is between about 2 o'clock in the afternoon here Central Time, between 2 and about 3:30. I know it's a very narrow window. You are also welcome to text me, and I'll be happy to get with you at my first available opening, in relationship to that. So, just let me know. We'll go from there. All right, so reuse the ferrite here because it's good ferrite. For what we're doing, we're going from when I first pulled those off, I thought that was 18 gauge. It's actually 16, which is fine, but we are going to go ahead and bump that up to a little bit bigger wire. We're actually going to use 14 gauge. It'll just give us a little more oomph. Hopefully a little less drop on the end result here. So that's what we're after. But yeah, Bill, every other weekend, which this is my weekend off. So typically on my weekends off, I'm available essentially from about 2 o'clock till almost 5 a.m. in the morning. Oh, good deal. If I remember right, the project that you were talking about here, well, last year, I think you were wanting to go ahead and get a speaker built, if I remember right. I know it sounds silly, building a speaker, but if it has to do with that project, that will be another fun build. Or I did one here a few years ago for walkie-talkie. We built a amplifier directly into a Cobra 2000 speaker. All right, so this put up here. Probably going to have to go all the way to the outside edge. Loop this down. Okay. So I think that's going to work like that. Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised to see that I had that many watchers on the video this afternoon. Given the fact that it is Easter Sunday. All right. Before I get started too deep, I need to turn on the exhaust fan. Yeah, I'm going to put these in, and then I'll work all the other necessary components around this here. That one I'm not going to have to trim other than just the insulation. That's good. Okay. Wowzers, that's warm. Hey, good evening, Tracy. Yeah, round 2, Gary. Round 2. Yeah, we're going to get this all built, and then I'll actually tune this tomorrow and get it finalized as far as on that. As soon as I finish up with this one, I'm going to start on this one. I was actually hoping just a lot of little things, and for some reason I had to have sleep somewhere in between all that. Otherwise, I probably would have either had this one or this one already done today. So that was at least my goal. That way, by this time, I would actually be on what I was hoping on, which is my power supply that I've got to build. So it is what it is. Keep trucking away a little at a time, and we'll get there. Sometimes I forget about the camera being there, so I don't think about some of the little things, which is, how the board or something is turned in relationship to the camera. You guys can see what I'm actually soldering in. Which right now we're just putting our filter caps on the DC board ground, or DC rail. Go. Okay. Since I got more room on this side, I'm actually going to go ahead and install a protection diode. As silly as it sounds, there's very few of us that I know of that actually even put protection diodes in there. Yeah, sounds like we got a little skip that's trying to come in, guys. Maybe. I always did like the skip when it came in late in the evenings like this. To me, I found that the most enjoyable just because there wasn't all the hash and trash on the radio, and you actually had a opportunity to have a good QSO. Alrighty, I feel better now. We got that in, protection there. Let's see, what else? I think other than the power wires, I think we're done back here. It's the only thing left is to make up our chokes to finish up the input. So let's get that taken care of. All right. Get our diodes built here. Try to make sure I turn it the right way. It's been a while, but I have over the years, I have accidentally set these up and put the capacitor on backwards. And thankfully these are small enough electrolytics that they don't make a enormous kaboom, but it's still enough to scare the bejesus out of you anyways. Well, sadly, it's already came and went, at least on my end. I heard the one guy, and that's it. We've got some locals that usually this time of the evening they're monitoring and having pretty good QSO going on 23, and right now I don't have anything. It's been that way the last couple of days, but we've also had really, really good weather too. So, I got a feeling that's got a lot to do with, people's outdoors activities. It's just like this summer, I am going to slow down here in the shop for a little while. That way I can actually get my motorcycle out. I got to take it, get brakes fixed, new tires, plates, insurance, all that good stuff. Grease job, oil change, all the all the norm, if you will. So that's going to be an expensive endeavor as far as to get that all up and going this year. Plates, the insurance, tires. Yeesh. I'm not looking forward to that. Over here. Fingers will let me do what I want. I actually forgot that I had these little blue disc capacitor, or these little blue capacitors here. I've been using the last few times because I had forgot I had these. I've been using, which I mean, I've got tons of these in all different shapes, sizes, what have you. It's just a 0.1 UF capacitor. Um, these are made by Panasonic. They've got a lot more girth to them, so they're able to handle, a little bit more on the amperage. Not that you really need it for amperage, but it's just to knock off some of the little aspiratics that may come in there. So, and they're actually rated for the same. Again, not necessarily amperage, but here we're not using it where there's actually a physical load that's truly being produced on this biasing. Typically on a 4-pill like this or a 2-pill, and this is something else that a lot of people don't take into consideration when they're building circuits as far as for your biasing. One of the things that oftentimes gets forgotten about, they check for the voltage, but if the voltage is being sucked completely out of the circuit, there's not enough amperage. Now, in this particular case, we use what they call milliamps instead of amps, which is just a physical breakdown of 1 amp load. So, on each 2-pill section, generally speaking, you're going to have somewhere between about 200 to about 280 milliamps worth of current that's going to be drawn at less than a volt. So, for that being said, that's a tremendous amount that's actually being siphoned off of the circuit for each side. So, it's something to kind of keep in mind if you're a do-it-yourselfer and you want to get into it. There's all different variations of voltages and different variations on biasing circuits and techniques. Some work great no matter what the circumstance. Some will work, and some, they're in there. So, part of it is you've got to kind of have a mental note when you're going into it, as far as making sure that you've got enough physical current draw. Now, in some cases, you can actually make up, depending on what your voltages are, in some cases, you can actually make it up right here by changing out. Now, in this case, I just use a 100 UF capacitor, on mine. Believe it or not, now some of them I've used 220 or even as much as 470, based on what format that you're using. And what that amounts to is the reason why you're going up to such a huge amount on capacitance here is essentially so that you've got enough in order to go ahead and complete the circuit on the load. So again, just little things to actually consider, when trying to sit down and create your own version or doing it yourself. So which leads me to another interesting build that's going to be later on this summer, and we'll get into that as soon as I get some new cabinets in. I've been ordering products in order to go ahead and get everything set up, for some of the new stuff that I want to be able to offer you guys. And give you some different options. Okay. Oh, it's still warm. Yes, parts are incredibly expensive. Just ask me. I got my order in Friday. For transistors. And that's not counting what I've already still got in stock right now. Yeah, rarely do I ever try to buy that much, but as crazy as it is, here it is just now at the beginning of April, if you will, first week in April. And this makes twice that I have ordered 100 transistors. This time I ordered 120 instead of 100. On the RM Italy amps, yes, they are basically a disposable amplifier. When it needs work, yeah. Now the sad thing is I have actually looked into some cabinetry that is somewhat in that same realm as the RM Italy. I've been trying to find a company that will, and again, it's one of those where they want to sell me, 500 plus cabinets in order to get them into the price range that I want. I am not big enough to justify that kind of expense unless I actually have, multiple pre-ordered sales in order to do something like that. But I've been looking into some cabinets that are heat sink and everything all in one, and I know that that is a more economical way to do it. But for some of the small amplifiers, just for an example, a 2-pill 2290, a 2-pill 454 amplifier, small amplifiers, 1-pill amplifiers. You don't really need to have this ginormous amp just to be able to get the heat sink and stuff. So I've looked into a couple of different places. I asked about, and I thought it was a fairly sizable amount. And, I told them what my price range that I was looking to stay in. I said, look, this is the price range I'm looking at. I need something with a built-in heat sink. They had 2 good viable options. The problem is I couldn't buy them. Grab one here. I couldn't buy them cheaper than what I can buy this for, and this is already ready to go. This has already got a fan built in, or place for a fan rather. So when you stop and think about it, it's not practical. This one is one that I got back from having it powder coated. So this one's available. And since we had some of the stickers and everything made up for all the other stuff, I went ahead where these are so small on the cabinets, which this is what I usually use just for one pill. What I did was go ahead and have him print out the Rainmaker right into the faceplate covering that's for this one. So, this one's ready to, ready to actually start building in as far as for a one pill. Again, I don't keep a lot of those. I usually order about 2 or 3 at a time. I really need to start buying 6 or more to get the better price on them, but I just don't get many calls anymore for one pill amplifiers, and part of it just has to do with the expense of them. It's one of the sadly, it's one of the most expensive amps for the wattage that you get. It's one of the most expensive builds. We actually do it more as a service on whenever we build one of those than we do actually making any kind of money. As sad as it sounds. Yeah, Gary, that's actually about right. I mean, I've had several of those. Here about 15 years ago, one of the hottest little amplifiers, and it was one of those that, again, I couldn't build an amp for what it put out. I couldn't build one for the price that I could buy those and retail them for, which was that little KLV 203, I think it was. It just, great little amplifiers. But if you ran much more than your Cobra 148 or, a nominally tuned Cobra 29 into it, chances are she was going to blow up. And when it did, by the time you go through and find the right attributes in relationship to the transistors and get it all tore apart, you wound up within about $8 to $10 of what would actually cost to buy the whole amplifier brand new again. So, and it's sad because, you've got this nice little heat sink that is now rendered, inert. There's not much of anything we can do with it. So, so just one of those things that is kind of sad. That in just a little more. Well, I appreciate that. On the ICA, I think the little bitty one that I showed you there at the end, I think for the board, heatsink, and cabinet, I think it's around $45 for the cabinet is what you're looking at. Like I said, it's one of those that it's so hard to actually compete with the price of one of the little RM Italies. But again, I've seen guys run those for years and years and years and never have them quit. But I've also seen them last a week. And there's almost no in between on those little RM Italies. Then you go into the little bit bigger ones, and they'll do the peak wattage, but they don't seem to do the RMS. That was something else that I noticed also. But when you're talking about new guys getting into the game and they're really not sure what the difference is between having a hand-built amp versus a true production amp. Those $60 versus $200. I mean, I can, like I said, I can see the allure to buy something cheaper. Hello, it's Warren. Okay, so those aren't soldered yet, but I've also got to come off of the other side of these transformers up here as well. So I'll set this off to the side for a minute. And winding we will go. No, I see you there. Yeah, you must have been a bad boy or something, because I'm able to read all your comments there, Warren. That's odd, because like I said, that's the first time I've ever seen. That's the first time I've ever seen that happen to anybody. That's the reason why I thought that was kind of odd. This is right there in between. The craftsmanship and everything was a little bit too good for for Arlen. I hate to say that, but I think this one was a Carl built, but at the same token, since it had the DEIs in it, I think Carl got out of it there for a while, before actually going to the DEIs. That's the only part that, like I said, it's right there at that breakover point. So that's the reason why I'm not 100% sure if this one was an Arlen built or a Carl built, just because of the transistors. So depending on who knows that answer, we could say who did or didn't. But I'm going to guess Arlen, just because, like I said, or excuse me, not Arlen, Carl, just because the workmanship was actually in this one, and was a lot better than at least the last few that came across my workbench before he went ahead and closed the business. So. Yeah, that's actually going to stay. That's actually going to stay prevalent. That's actually what you're seeing here, also in the background right now. This one's a 2290 build. This one's a 454 build, and then I've just got a normal. But yeah, the Evolution series is actually going to be, essentially here to stay. I've invested. I've invested about 5,000, between cases and transistors, not to mention, some of the power supplies that I've also purchased, and I'm getting ready to actually order another case of the 100 amp Meanwell power supplies. That's going to make me quiver, because this next batch is actually going to be, for my own build. I'm actually going to go ahead and build one. Excuse me for here in the shop. Like I said, I was going to hopefully get started on that this evening, but so far that hasn't worked out yet. Yeah, there's only at this time, there's only like one or two on the Evolution series that the boards do not have the yellow tint like this. And a lot of it's because of the fact that I had already started the build prior. One of them was a bass amplifier, a little 2-pill bass amplifier, and then I forget what the other one was. But everything's, everything in the amp section, they're all going to be way heavy duty. They're going to be biased. mean, there's going to be a few exceptions to the rule where I'm not going to be using, a 5/8 core transformer. Just for an example, like on the 454s, it doesn't play well with a 5/8 core transformer. So yeah, it's one of those where I can't really use something that's way overdone. Just for examples. Okay. And on the Evolution series, they're either going to be all black or at least a black face. Bear with me here, guys. I'm digging down to another cabinet. Okay. And then we have, for example, this one. You got your, it's complete black. Face is going to be nice and smooth. And textured top, if you can see that in the camera. Sadly, the camera does not do this case justice. But like I said, you're going to see, multiple variations. Good evening, Time Art. Not sure what the other guy is there, but I see the smiley face with the hand, but looks like some little weird guy. It's hard telling with you, Art. Oh, another one here. I know I'm getting sidetracked. And as long as they are available, this is something else you guys aren't used to seeing either. At this time, I am going to stock 3 different President radios. The Lincoln 2 Plus is going to be one that I'm actually going to start stocking. The President Richard, in which these two are my absolute favorites. And then the one that has really surprised me, which is this President Walker. This is actually a true 11 meter radio, strictly CB. Does have talkback in it, built-in variable power, built-in talkback, all of which works really well. Automatic squelch control, which surprisingly does work rather well. Does have weather, which to me I could care less about. You're either going to be in the middle of a tornado or hurricane, or you're not. But for some of them, some people, they do like the weather. This also still has the 7-color multi-display that's available as well. But these 3, I haven't got them set up and ready to actually send out the door as of yet. But I'm still trying to get caught up on some of these repairs, guys. I'm not going to stock tons of radios, but I am going to try to start stocking at least 3 Cobra 29s. They take an incredibly long time to build. You can ask Art. Art has been after me for over a year. And since I sold my Dodge pickup, which the radio, I barely used it in my truck. He's actually bought that, so it's getting ready to go out to him here later this week. But again, like I said, they take an incredible amount of time as far as to go ahead and build those up. So I will probably build a few of those. Again, it's not one of those that I've got a lot of time for, because of where I've been trying to concentrate primarily on these amps and power supplies, especially with some of the new stuff that I'm trying to get out there for you guys to see and give you other options. For example, there's a lot of people that, they really don't like biasing amplifiers, because they're kind of a pain in the rear. I'm actually kind of capitalizing on that with the Evolution series, and that is there we go. That is one of the things that's kind of setting those apart off to the side, because even if it's an AM radio, the biasing does make for just a little cleaner amplifier. Yeah. Yeah. Lord, I would go broke doing that. Unless I tripled the price. I guess that would work. Triple the price and then give you half off. That could work. There we go. All right, so on the front end, so we're hooked up here. Got that going on. That's taken care of. That's good. Soldered there. All right. We did remember the 10 ohms. So we're good there. Our capacitor across the input transformers, capacitors on the output transformers. 120s, reflector to ground. Yep. Yep. All right, so the only thing that's left is power cable. That's all we got left. Go ahead and get this pre-tinned here, and it'll make it easier when we go to put it in. Under normal circumstances, I would use 2 8-gauge wires or a 4-gauge wire. Sadly, we do not have enough room. I wouldn't do this under most circumstances. However, where this is being built for specific use and radio, this will actually carry the current that it needs for what it's being used for. There we go. Ah, 3CX3000. You know, as soon as my rich uncle gets out of the poorhouse, or my buddies down there in Mississippi wind up hitting the, mega lottery or some crazy thing like that, we might have a chance in getting into that. for a free driver. Alrighty. That about down. I think that'll work. I've got one more piece to put on. And this is going in your box right now so that I don't forget. Alex. Go. Well, good evening, Charles. I didn't even see Charles Hood in there. Good evening time, buddy. I was actually thinking you were a different Charles, especially since I've seen a 3.6 3000 in there somewhere. I don't remember how far back that was. Somewhere. Yeah. Drinking heavy tonight, guys. Well, that's the whole thing that we hope on, anyways. All right. Just gotta find my little butane torch. Yes. Well, I got a heck of a mess going on in there. Gee, Christmas. Yeah, it is definitely a sleeper. Definitely a sleeper on that. Alrighty. I know you guys have seen me do this multiple different times as far as with some of the thin solder, and some of the heavier stuff like this. Um, Part of the reason why I do this is because of the type of solder that this is. It actually makes for bonding a little bit tighter once it actually cools. And what I mean by that is the fact that it has to do with the composition that's actually inside the metal of it. Um, the roll of solder that I've got over here, this wire is, or the solder is like ultra thin. Typically, I only use 3 different sizes depending on what I'm working on. And one of the things that I came across, and it happens in amplifiers, it happens in radios, and I'm sure if you've been in the hobby long enough, at some point you have had what is called the proverbial cold solder joint. It's nothing new. Everybody's had one. If you haven't, hold on, you will. But oftentimes you'll see where I use some of that, and reason why is because it's a silver bearing solder. I should have. I don't have to take it off of there. I think I've got a spare down here. It's Kester brand solder. Put my bifocals on. Materials. It's in some of the language. Somewhere on here, it actually tells you that it's contains a small percentage of actual silver that's in it. This stuff cost me like $105 a roll for this stuff, so I use it kind of sparingly. It's 20 thousandths thick. And what it amounts to is they use a percentage of tin, another composition, and silver in order to go ahead and make up the difference. It is actually a lead-free solder, but once this heats up and it cools back down, what this does is it actually kind of hardens a little bit more. So whenever it's able to actually take a little bit more physical heat than most of your average solder. So, and you'd be surprised at what just a little bit will do. Where I've had radios that, especially the guys that drive trucks for a living, it's not the fact that you guys don't try to take good care of your equipment. It's just the fact that your truck doesn't take very good care of your equipment for you. Meaning it just gets beat all to heck on the inside along with you. So it's pretty rough on equipment, just driving a truck for a living. I've fixed a lot of cold solder joints over the years, and people would complain, after getting the radio back, 2-3 months later, the same thing had happen again, and it'd come back, and we'd go and suck off some of the old solder and resolder everything. And that's when I started doing some research, and I found Kestra had a couple of different types of solder. This one, I'm not 100% sure how they've got it rated. I don't know if it's 0.3% or if it's 3%, because it depends on who's doing the mathematical equations at the time, I think. But theoretically, it's supposed to have about 3% silver in the solder itself. They've got set up to where, like I said, once it settles, it'll go ahead and harden just a little bit more, which is actually great. So go ahead and do a small little wick. Way it just kind of holds the solder together, or holds the wires rather, excuse me. Draw the solder down inside of it. Now, the small 8-gauge wire like this is super easy to do. The bigger the wire, the more of a challenge it is. And why I say that is the fact that when it's small like this, I can keep enough heat in there where I can actually dip the wire back and forth in it, and you'll actually see the solder starting to wick up inside of it. So once you actually do the full immersion into the cavity and let it cool, you've got a really good bond between the cable and the connector itself. Yeah, like I said, Gary, if you've been in the hobby long enough, even guys that are just in their regular pickup trucks, their cars, their cruisers, whatever the case may be, um, we've all had cold solder joints. One of my favorite radios several years ago that I had, um, it developed a couple of cold solder joints, and it had to do with where it sat at in the truck. Uh, Sadly, my pickup truck that I drove, and I still do once in a blue moon, put too much in there. I developed a cold solder joint. And it's from where I actually mounted it up to the ceiling. It's got an overhead rack, so that's where I actually had mounted the radios. So over the years, just all the heat that actually came down uh, through the actual sun, through the roof itself, actually just cooked the entire insides of the radio. So um, yeah, I had some serious fun with that. So that's what I was afraid of. But that's okay. Do is heat that back up. Quick little shake. And we're good to go again. Let that cool, and I'll knock that little corner out just a little bit. Okay. Just need a good flat surface. And there we go. I like the sound of that click. It's when you know you get it in there just the way you want it. Okay, for the Adapto plug. Yep. Nice and snug. Everything plugs together like it should. Alrighty. We're going to set this off to the side, and we're going to go to the next project. All right. Because like I said, I'm going to take time. I'll actually go through and get this tuned out tomorrow, make sure all the components are functioning as they should, and then we'll go ahead and do a finalized video on this. I'm going to go ahead and set the transformers on at least 2 of the 3 that I've got here for right now. This one I don't have a buyer for. This one I do, and this one I do. So those have got to be done here hopefully by the end of this week. I also need to start in on another project. just for myself. Otherwise, I can't do anything larger than, basically what's here on the workbench. And even at that, with the way this one's going to be drove, I'll actually need more than 100 amp power supply, and currently that's all I have set up to use at this time. So part of the growing pains of selling your personal power supply for the shop before you have the other one built. Anyhow, I'll set this off to the side. Okay. All right, so even though these have got a coating on the board, typically right underneath where the ground of the transistors are, it's actually been removed or covered over with tape, during the coating process. That way, we know we can get a really good ground, because that's always the big thing too, is on your transistors, you want to have that good ground going on. So. was hoping that Alex from there in Texas, goes by Bighorn on the Super Bowl. I was actually hoping I would see him pop in here this evening. Of course, he's probably been pretty busy. I've got his amp that I've already taken a look at. Ordered parts today, so they should ship out first thing Monday. So I'll see those about Thursday, finish him up. He's got the very first one. He was in a heck of a challenge here last month, and kept his equipment hard at it. So he popped a couple of small capacitors. Actually didn't hurt the amplifier at all, other than just had a couple of capacitors go down, but we got to go back and revamp it a little bit. So I've got some Super Duty, not just heavy duty, but Super Duty parts. I've never had a problem out of one of these capacitors that I've used on the one pill circuit. I've ran for years, never seen them ever blow. And this is the first time that I've seen that. So I've got some specialty stuff that's coming just for him. Okay. Should still have some matched ones for the sides. Yep. On some of the capacitors that you have to have multiples of the same value. I've got several trays that I've got marked as matched. So when I go through and I start pulling, everything that's in one segment is all the same, value within at least one puff. And that cleans that drawer out, or that segment. Yeah, it'll be power supply time here very, very shortly. So stay tuned. We're going to go ahead and keep on going here in a few minutes. Like I said, I'm going to get these parts set. Because there's certain things that I can do through the week because I'm getting ready to hit my long week. My long week at my other job consists of about 96 hours, guys. So 96 hours, and then I still spend at least an hour to an hour and a half a day on my long week. I still come out here, like I said, for anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. Just doing what I'm doing right here. The other thing that I've still got to do too, speaking of which, not just with this amplifier, but since I've got three, I've actually got four of them I've got to do this with, which includes the Midnight Special back there, which is feedbacks. Feedbacks and some of the other chokes. Like I said, that's the stuff I'm going to do through the week. Get that all taken care of. Okay. I'll put those on after I put the 10 ohmers on. Just a little pad to keep it from ever making it to ground. lot of smoke, guys. Okay. All righty. I've got that. So go ahead and put these on, and we're actually going to stop. And I'm also going to lay out the parts for the feedbacks for the other, while we can get that taken care of. I don't forget that before I start tuning. Oops. Of course it'll stick when it falls down. And believe it or not, guys, it's actually faster in most cases to actually build 3, 4, 5 at a time than it is to actually build one. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, just for an example here, I've already got the parts pulled. So if I'm pulling parts for one, now I just have to pull I just have to go ahead and pull parts for the others as well. Well, I've already got them in my hands. Okay. And we'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and set the transformers on the other one as far as on the output. Yeah, this way I've got everything on the same queue whenever we go to do this. Okay. Yeah, the HGs, especially when you go into the 454s, they are kind of an unusual creature. The reason why I say that is you can use typically one of two, and in certain circumstances, three different types of transformers. Um, you know, based on your build. For example, if it's just a standard Class C, which is what the other board that doesn't have the coating on it, that one's going to be a standard Class C. That one I'm using a 1-inch transformer versus this one that actually gets to use a 1.25 inch. And granted, there's not a huge difference between them, but when you add the biasing and stuff, it actually just makes it a little bit nicer to tune out whenever you got the extra capacitance, or excuse me, inductance on the back end. So between that and then the biasing, it just usually lays down really good. Yeah, generally speaking, Gary. Now I do have a 350 amp that's built and ready to rock and roll. Um, I'd have to get you a price on it, but it's the one that I was building here a week or so ago. It's actually underneath the workbench out of the way, just because it's the plug and everything that I've got over there for my workbench for that's not typically for testing, which is on the other side of the workbench. It's set up with a totally different plug than what the other one is that I've got. But 350 amps will also do a huge portion of almost anything that the average person's going to come across. The 350 is a heavy duty 350. I mean, if you actually go by the by the numbers, it actually is. It's actually about a 420 amp power supply, technically. Well, good evening, Josh. Sure, what's that? Good afternoon, Wayne. I see you pop back in there, buddy. All right. Which is better to own, a Rig Expert or an MFJ 259 or the 269? Well, that's a good question. Believe it or not, I've actually sold one of these already. You've got three viable pieces of equipment to use. I know that there's a $40 or $60 analyzer that it kind of works. I almost got sucked into that that whole let's try to save money. But where I had a very good friend over in Idaho, you've gone and messed up your bean. Alrighty. Well, between the three of them, depending on what you're doing, the MFJ is probably one of the most simplest meters to use. This one here I've had, actually I've had it longer than I've had my daughter, which is sad to say. But this one's like 20 years old. This one I actually need to send back into MFJ and actually have repaired. Either that or sell it on eBay for as is for parts. This will get you pretty much anywhere you need to go. Like I said, it's very rudimentary. It's going to give you your frequency. One of the nice things about this is the fact that it does have the analog meters. Analog meters have been a huge thing for me just because of the fact that, I can watch it versus the numbers and what have you on the basic screen. Still a really good tool to use. However, it doesn't give you the parameters. For example, here, if you hit all parameters, pops up. Okay, so at a quick glance here, versus the MFJ, which, I took the batteries out of it. You get a little bit more in relationship to with this of what you do with the MFJ. If you know how to use, for example, your phase angles can be useful as far as knowing at what point your takeoff is going to be. Also, your gain, in this case, using the dummy load that's on there right now with the other end open, it's showing a gain of 32 dB. But you can also, take this and find out what you've got going on here. You do have your SWR that's going to be showing, under the principle of the SWR, or as far as on your principal frequency. So, you're going to be able to see your SWR. You're going to see what your phase angle is. You're also going to be able to see what your, like I said, what your gain actually is off the antenna. Now, in some cases, depending on if you are looking for inductance or capacitance, this is also right here all at your fingertips, just at a quick glance. So that's one of the nice things. I've not used this a whole lot, which I bought this actually just prior to buying the KC901S. Now, one of the things that they did include on the Rig Expert that I like is the fact that you do have an analog, even though it's digital, it is an analog SWR meter. So again, it's also going to tell you what your return loss is as far as in your dBs, and show you what your SWR ratio is depending on what frequency you're trying to set it at. So it still kind of functions in the same form as this, with the exception if you don't have your knob, you're actually going to use buttons to adjust your frequency either up or down. This has definitely went above and beyond, in my opinion, what the MFJ is. However, the MFJ, you don't fall in this category because I've known you for way too many years. You are not starting out fresh into, CB land or into frequencies in general. This is a great tool for beginners. You passed that stage well over 10 years ago, big guy. So now it's time to either step into a Rig Expert, or if you want to quiver a little bit, into one of these. This will take some time to get used to. the 259 or the 269, relatively, they're going to give you the same information. The only difference really is the frequency span that's going to be available. You got the 259B, the C, the 269. There's like one or two other versions. But again, you're with a very dated piece of equipment. Besides the fact that you got to have, 20 batteries with you at almost all times, and it times out much faster than what the Rig Expert does. But the Rig Expert, I think, is going to give you a lot more data that is going to be useful for you as a whole. Now, the one that I chose, which is the AA55, the reason why is because of the fact that it will cover from 6 meter, all the way up to 6 meters. And, back in the day, the 6 meter is considered the magic band. I love it. You go in here, now you've got graphs, you've got, oh, geez, oh, Pete, you have got so much more information yet. It's the difference between going from the MFJ over to the Rig Expert. Everything that the Rig Expert has got, this has got, along with a few more gizmos and gadgets. This is about $300. This is $1,300. So again, even if you buy the ultra high end that goes all the way up to like a gig, you're still under, $600-800, and you'll have a lot of useful information, and you can cover a lot of frequencies. As far as on the Rig Expert, I will never need to go any higher than this because this meter's already got it covered. So, like I said, you've got multiple different choices out there. These are probably the three best that has been on the market for the last 20 years. Again, you've surpassed, basic training, which is great for the MFJ because it doesn't give you an information overload for starters. This is going to give you information overload to a certain degree, but it's easy to go ahead and navigate through all the different features, and it's pretty well self-explanatory once you start pushing, a couple of different buttons. And if you're familiar with what typically an F is for, and not talking about your grades in school, it's just a function key to get to everything else that's still listed. I've actually left the plastic on mine, and I figure I'll leave it on there until it just, gets nasty, and then I'll peel it off and, keep going. But I haven't used, which it does have a, hookup as far as like for the printer cable cord that you can actually hook up your computer to this. I haven't used that feature as of yet. Same thing with the KC901. And a lot of it's where, again, just trying to get caught up with all the different pieces of equipment that's still coming in. I'm right there at that point where I'm just about ready to quit taking any repair work for the rest of the year, just so that I can stay ahead of the game. I've only got one major project that I've got to do for myself as far as here in the shop. I've got one outside the shop, which is I want to try to get my beams taken care of this year too. So I said, there's lots and lots and lots of useful information that's out there, especially with all the different meters. I know Luke had harped at me for almost 5 years to get one of the KC901s. Unfortunately, it was really out of my budget, up until the last couple of years. And I finally had one project that I was working on one day, and I fought it for 4 days. And I had circled the amplifier, got the war drums out, the whole 9 yards, trying to find a problem with it. And, everything was right. Went through, checked it like a bazillion times, but it still had an imbalance that I could not find. And, was on the phone with him for, geez, oh Pete's, like 2 hours, in a powwow, just trying to go through, different things. And again, you're looking at the only thing that I'd had at that moment was the MFJ. I had just bought the Rig Expert, so but I hadn't really got myself familiarized at all with it. But compared to the KC901, those are very archaic methods now. As up to date as what they are, they're kind of archaic in relationship to using, your analyzers. But they will all work in the same fashion. It's just part of it depends on how much money you're willing to spend and, how much you want to learn about the meters. Like I said, they've all got a lot of different pros and cons on them, from simplicity to cost. My two favorite, since I've actually bought them and have started using them, that are, two of the most valuable pieces of equipment, more so than almost anything else here on the, on the workbench or under the workbench, in relationship to even meters, has been, these two. The reason why is because of the fact that I'm able to go into the circuitry itself of most of the amplifiers, and you can actually probe around with that by, knowing what you're checking for, and you're able to go ahead and find mismatches. You're able to find or go through the L networks that are involved on the transistorized amps, the tank circuits on your tube type. Again, even going to yet one other piece that is definitely archaic in nature. Let's get to it here. Let's talk an archaic. Let's just do this. This will make somebody feel really, really, really old. Yes, I'm that old. For those of you that don't know, believe it or not, it's a grid dip meter. Complete with coils. Like I said, going back into the days of old and, the archaic methods, believe it or not, this was once upon a time, your most valuable piece of equipment. This one actually is, on the inside, this one actually is tube type. Believe it or not, that's how old this one is. This one is absolutely awesome, mainly because of the fact that this one was gifted to me by a very good friend. I did some work for him, and he'd brought this over to kind of show me, and he'd actually bought a couple of them. The other one, which he was going to keep this one originally for himself, but the other one had a nice case. This one, I've got what's left of the box. It does have the stand for the coils, but this was how once upon a time people would tune coaxes, amplifiers, go through different circuits, and then Heathkit had the build your own version of this. And then, before, I think all the way into the 80s, before they actually started coming up with some really new stuff in relationship to grid dip meters, I bought this one actually about 5 or 6 years ago. Reason why is because I didn't realize, with some of the different other features that I had available to me with using the MFJ, I was actually looking for something very, very specific. And everybody that I knew from back in the day told me, well, you need a grid dip meter. And the reason why was because that was what everybody that's even older than I am, this is what they're still familiar with. I know you can tune a jumper length with this. Sadly, I cannot tell you how to do it. I have seen it done one time when I was much, 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 much younger. Um, this one just runs on a 9-volt battery. This one you actually have to plug physically in the wall, turn the filament on, let it warm up, and then turn it on in order to go ahead and use it. So, again, um, quite interesting. I remember an older gentleman that built amplifiers that's wasn't too far from where I'm at. He was actually in the Navy for many, many years on the naval subs, and that's where he learned everything that he knew about tube type amplifiers. This is all he used, between this and the slide rule. So that was my original start going into amplifier builds and what have you. So, this is one of those that I will probably never fire up, or if I do, it'll just be to, horse around with it. But where everything is now moving forward, and we've got such huge differences in meters. I mean, we could talk for hours and hours and hours just on meters. And there's going to be pros and cons, like I said, with every attributes. It's just picking something that you feel comfortable using, and learn everything that you can about it. Put that one away here real quick. Alrighty. But anyways, enough down memory lane. I'm going to take a short break, guys. Mainly because of the fact that I'm going to have to reset up. I want to clear off some of my workbench and get a couple of hours in on my power supply before I set it off to the side for tomorrow's projects and finalizations. So, all right, guys, stay tuned. I'll be back in about 20 minutes. That way I can go fix a snack and get some power supply modules out of the house and the cabinet for the next build. All right, guys, take care. God bless.